Government Oversight Committee, do you?
I'm not on the committee, if that's the gentleman's question.
Well, I mean, so who went and put this list together?
The Government Oversight Committee, if the gentleman would yield.
I yield. Of course I yield.
Okay, and we ask everyone to speak to the chair. Gentleman is breaking.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. If the gentleman will yield, and I understand he will, that the Government Oversight Committee put the majority of this list together. I want to emphasize some also come from media reports. And so I don't challenge the legitimacy of the Government Oversight conclusion, and I don't have reason to believe that the analysis of this is illegitimate.
Restoring my time just for a second. Did you check the media reports to see if they were accurate? We've all heard of media reports that are inaccurate. I mean, you're casting aspersions on groups here from all over the country, and none of us here have any indication of the basis, and you're saying some of these came from media attacks. Did you check and verify that these media attacks were accurate? Yes.
Let me just take your argument then down to the conclusion, which will be, if I respond to your question, you'll ask me another and another and another, and it'll get down to, have they been convicted in a court of law, and are you sure that it was a legitimate case, and is it under appeal, and has it gone to the Supreme Court? We can never reach a conclusion on this. The gentleman knows that.
Yeah.
And so we have to draw a judgment call, and that's what this Congress does.
I take my time back. I remember a senator from Wisconsin in the 50s who did just about the same kind of thing and was rebuked by the other body for casting aspersions on innocent people.
Would the gentleman yield?
I'm just telling you, you are asking this House to vote on something, and you haven't verified it. You don't know what these groups are all about, and it's a disgrace to even offer this amendment.
Would the gentleman yield?
I yield.
I just asked, since the gentleman has raised the issue of the senator from Wisconsin, if he could name any individual who was unjustly charged by the senator from Wisconsin.
I'm not going to get into that tonight. I'll be glad to send you a list. When you verify the media reports and can come up with a list and talk about these organizations in a meaningful way, instead of just putting a list here together and expecting us to vote on this thing, it's ridiculous.
Mr. Chairman, I move to strike the last question.
Gentleman yields back his time and reminds everyone, talk to me. You go through the chair.
Mr. Chairman.
Gentleman from North Carolina.
Mr. Chairman,
the chairman wish to strike the last word.
I wish to strike the last word, yes.
He is recognized.
Mr. Chairman, I'm not going to prolong this, but I do want to plead with my colleagues. This is something that this body simply should not be a party to. Bringing in 3 pages plus of organizations that many of us, most of us, have never heard of, have no knowledge of. They may be on somebody's list somewhere. We have no knowledge of the basis for inclusion on that list. There may have been media reports about them. Whatever there is that would back up this kind of list, at a minimum it should be provided to us tonight. Anyone offering an amendment of this sort ought to provide the basic documentation for the kind of stigmatizing, the kind of exclusion that is being proposed here of these organizations from any ability to compete for funding in this bill. I hope it's obvious. I hope it's obvious to everybody here, no matter what their political persuasion, that this is simply unacceptable and must be rejected. And with that, I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. Anyone else seek recognition on this amendment? If not, the question is on the amendment offered by the gentleman from Iowa. Those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed say no. No. The opinion of the chair, the noes have it.
Mr. Chairman.
Gentleman from Iowa.
Request a recorded vote. Pursuant to Clause 6 of Rule 18, further proceedings on the amendment offered by the gentleman from Iowa will be postponed. Who seeks recognition? Gentleman, for what purpose does the gentleman from Minnesota rise?
Mr. Chairman, I have an amendment at the desk.
Clerk will designate the amendment.
Amendment offered by Mr. Kravac of Minnesota. At the end of the bill, before the short title, insert the following section. None of the funds made available by this Act may be used in contravention of Section 236C of the Immigration and Nationality Act, 8 United States Code 1226C.
Gentleman from Minnesota is recognized for 5 minutes.
Mr. Chairman, I rise in support of my amendment. This amendment stipulates that none of the funds of this bill may be used in violation of Section 236C of the Immigration and Nationality Act. Practically speaking, my amendment would prohibit the United States Immigration and Customs Enforcement, ICE, from using taxpayer dollars to process the release or to administer alternative forms of detention to illegal immigrants who committed a crime which mandates their incarceration under Section 236C of Immigration and Nationality Act. Importantly, Section 236C requires the U.S. government detain illegal aliens who have committed any one of a series of crimes detailed into Section 236C until that illegal alien is deported to their home country. For example, Section 236C would require ICE to detain an alien that committed arson until that alien is deported. I think this is a very common sense provision. In fact, in my opinion, that criminal illegal aliens shouldn't be in the United States in the first place, but that is a debate for another day. Make no mistake, I want to state that I think the vast majority of ICE employees are great Americans, and I personally appreciate the work that they do to ensure our nation remains a nation founded under the rule of law. Nevertheless, ICE does not always operate in accordance with Section 236C. For example, ICE has allowed criminal illegal aliens who are waiting for deportation hearing to leave federal detention facilities and re-enter the general public if the criminal illegal alien is fitted with a GPS tracking device or regularly checks in with their ICE supervisor. This is very troubling to me, Mr. Chairman. In August 2010, ICE's policy of releasing dangerous criminal aliens proved deadly. According to the Freedom of Information Act, which I have, illegal aliens Carlos Montano was sentenced to over a year in jail for a second DWI and was released from ICE custody wearing only a GPS tracking device. This is in direct violation to Section 236C. Tragically, on August 1st, Montano got drunk, got behind a wheel, and collided head-on with a vehicle carrying 3 nuns. This head-on collision killed 66-year-old Sister Jeanette Moser of Virginia. To protect innocent citizens from criminal illegal aliens, I firmly believe we need to enforce immigration laws, especially Section 236C that mandates the detention of dangerous criminal illegal aliens. Therefore, I urge my colleagues to support this amendment to prohibit taxpayer funds from being used in violation of Section 236C. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I reserve the balance of my time.
Gentleman yields back. Gentleman from Alabama.
Mr. Chairman, we accept the gentleman's amendment.
Is there anyone else who wishes to speak to this amendment? If not, the question is on the amendment offered by the gentleman from Minnesota. Those in favor say aye. Somebody. Thank you. Those opposed, no. In the opinion of the chair, the ayes have it. The amendment is agreed.
Mr. Chairman.
Gentleman from Minnesota.
Request a roll call vote.
Pursuant to Clause 6 of Rule 18, further proceedings on the amendment offered by the gentleman from Minnesota will be postponed.
Thank you.
What purpose the gentleman from Michigan rise?
Mr. Chairman, I have an amendment at the desk.
Will the gentleman specify which amendment? Will the gentleman from Michigan specify which amendment?
I don't have the number.
Oh.
$149.
The clerk will report the amendment.
Amendment offered by Mr. Amash of Michigan. At the end of the bill, before the short title, insert the following section. None of the funds made available under this act may be used to purchase new advanced imaging technology machines.
Gentleman is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I offer this amendment on behalf of the distinguished gentleman from Utah, Mr. Chaffetz. My constituents and I share the concerns of the distinguished gentleman from Utah and his constituents, and millions of Americans, regarding the use of advanced imaging technology machines, also known as full-body scanners, at airports. We're concerned not only about the efficacy and safety of such machines, but also about the serious violations of privacy and our rights as protected by the Fourth Amendment to the Constitution, resulting from the government's use of such machines. It is in that spirit that I offer this amendment, I ask my colleagues for your support, and I yield back the balance of my time.
Gentleman yields back. For what purpose does the gentleman from Alabama rise?
I rise to strike the last word.
Gentleman is recognized for 5 minutes.
I rise in opposition to the amendment. The amendment is unnecessary. The bill includes no funding for new advanced imagery technology systems. This is because we could not afford. It's because we could not afford 275 new AIT as requested. We had to fill a $590 million hole left by the budget request gimmick, unauthorized advanced aviation fees. It is not because we oppose technology. In fact, AIT systems offer an alternative to pat-downs at airports, checkpoints, where non-metallic threats are a great concern. In addition, the deployment of new advanced target recognition capability will make the AIT systems less objectionable, as they display avatar figures, not actual images of screened individuals. Because of this amendment is unnecessary and needlessly limits discretion for security screening, I would urge the members to reject this amendment.
For what purpose the gentleman from North Carolina rise?
Mr. Chairman, I move to strike the last words.
Gentleman is recognized for 5 minutes.
And I wish to join the chairman of our subcommittee in opposing this amendment. Not because there's any funds in this bill for these advanced imaging machines, this particular technology. There is no funding in this bill for this purpose. But on principle, this amendment is objectionable. It could be very damaging. I won't dwell on the privacy safeguards. I think they've been debated in this body before, and we're well aware that privacy safeguards surrounding the use of this equipment are extensive. The face is blurred. There's no storage of the images. The operator of the machine is off the premises. And as the chairman just said, the technology is constantly being improved to protect privacy further. But the point also needs to be made that an amendment like this, if it were implemented, not just with respect to the current year funding, but with ongoing acquisition of these machines, this amendment would damage our ability, reduce our ability to find non-metallic explosives and weapons or bombs carried on a person's body. That's the fact of the matter. These advanced imaging machines are better able to detect a wide variety of threats that metal detectors simply cannot pick up. So adopting this amendment would put our citizens at risk. It's a step backwards in our security provisions, and it should be rejected. And I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. Does anyone else seek time on this amendment? If not, the question is on the amendment offered by the gentleman from Michigan. Those in favor will say aye. Those opposed, no. The opinion of the chair, the noes have it. Gentleman from Michigan.
Mr. Chair, I ask for a recorded vote.
Pursuant to Clause 6 of Rule 18, further proceedings on the amendment offered by the gentleman from Michigan will be postponed. Gentleman from Michigan.
Mr. Chair, I have an amendment at the desk.
Clerk will report the amendment. Is this Amendment 148?
Yes, it is.
Clerk will report it.
Amendment offered by Mr. Amash of Michigan. At the end of the bill, before the short title, insert the following. Section. None of the funds made available but under this Act may be used to operate or maintain existing advanced imaging technology machines as mandatory or primary screening devices.
Gentleman is recognized for 5 minutes.
Mr. Chair, I again offer this amendment on behalf of the distinguished gentleman from Utah, Mr. Chaffetz. As I mentioned previously, millions of Americans have serious concerns regarding the use of advanced imaging technology machines, also known as full-body scanners, at airports. In light of our serious concerns about efficacy, safety, and privacy, and the violation to our liberty, we ask that these machines not be funded for use as mandatory or primary screening devices. I ask my colleagues for your support, and I yield back the balance of my time.
Gentleman yields back. For what purpose the gentleman from Alabama is?
Mr. Chairman, I strike the last word.
Gentleman is recognized for 5 minutes.
I rise in opposition to this amendment. As we stated earlier, the amendment is unnecessary. The bill includes no funding for new advanced imagery technology systems. This is because we could not afford 275 new AIT requested. We had to fill a $590 million hole left by the budget request gimmick, which was the unauthorized aviation fees. It is not because we oppose technology. In fact, AIT systems offer an alternative to pat-downs at airports, checkpoints, where non-metallic threats are a great concern. In addition, the deployment of new advanced target recognition capability will make the AIT systems less objectable as they display avatar figures, not actual images of screened individuals. Because of this amendment is unnecessary and needlessly limits discretion for security screening, I would urge my fellow members to reject this amendment.
Gentleman is back. For what purpose the gentleman from North Carolina rise?
Mr. Chairman, I move to strike the last word.
Gentleman is recognized for 5 minutes.
Once again, I applied to the previous amendment, applies with equal force to this amendment. We're talking here about the need in our airports to employ the best and latest possible technology to save lives, and we're not doing this without knowledge of emerging threats, and the ability of different technologies to pick up more sophisticated threats, more difficult threats to detect. That's what these machines are all about. It's most unwise, I think, most irresponsible on the floor of this House to make judgments about this that actually could compromise our security in very, very serious ways. I urge rejection of this amendment.
Does any other member wish to be heard on this amendment? If not, the question is on the amendment offered by the gentleman from Michigan. Those in favor say aye. Opposed say no. Opinion of the chair, the ayes have it. Gentleman from North Carolina. Request a recorded vote pursuant to Clause 6 of Rule 18. Further proceedings on the amendment offered by the gentleman from Michigan will be postponed. Gentleman from Michigan.
Mr. Chair, I have one final amendment at the desk.
The clerk will report. Maybe.
It's number 14, sir.
The gentleman from Michigan, we have two versions of this particular amendment at the desk. If you'll come up here and make sure we have the right one. The clerk will report the amendment.
Amendment offered by Mr. Amash of Michigan. At the end of the bill, before the short title, insert the following section. None of the funds made available by this act may be used for any action by a political appointee, as that term is defined in Section 106 of Title 49 United States Code, to delay, vacate, or reverse any decision by an employee in the privacy office of the Department of Homeland Security to make records available pursuant to Section 552 of Title 5 United States Code, popularly known as the Freedom of Information Act.
Gentleman from Michigan is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My amendment prohibits political meddling in the Department's compliance with the Freedom of Information Act, commonly known as FOIA. FOIA gives citizens the right to know what their government is doing. As President Obama stated shortly after taking office, in our democracy, the Freedom of Information Act, which encourages accountability through transparency, is the most prominent expression of a profound national commitment to ensuring an open government. Countless instances of waste, fraud, and abuse have been exposed by using FOIA. In September 2009, political appointees in DHS implemented an unprecedented policy to review FOIA requests and documents proposed to be released. The current DHS political review process of FOIA is extraordinary. Chairman Issa and Senator Grassley wrote to 29 offices of Inspector Generals to request that they determine whether and to what extent political appointees have a role in responding to FOIA requests. According to the IG surveyed, the level of involvement of DHS's political staff in the FOIA response process is uniquely high. While it is the case that political staff at a very small number of agencies have prior notice of newsworthy releases, at no other agency do front office staff have the opportunity to withhold or otherwise delay such releases to avoid embarrassment or for political reasons. FOIA is vital to our democracy. It is the most powerful single tool citizens and the press have to discover what our government is doing. And the law has a long track record of exposing corruption and inefficiency to improve government for all Americans. My amendment protects FOIA from politicization at DHS. It prohibits DHS political appointees from improperly blocking the release of FOIA documents. My amendment allows DHS political appointees to continue to be aware of FOIA requests and documents proposed to be released, but it prevents the political appointees from interfering with the public's legal right to know. I ask for your support. I yield back the balance of my time.
Gentleman yields back. For what purpose the gentleman from Alabama rise?
Oh, I rise to strike the last word.
Gentleman is recognized for 5 minutes.
Oh, I think the gentleman from Michigan makes some very good points, and therefore we are prepared to accept this amendment.
Gentleman yields back. Gentleman from North Carolina.
Mr. Chairman, I move to strike the last words.
Gentleman is recognized for 5 minutes.
Mr. Chairman, I rise to oppose this amendment. I want to deal just for a moment, though, with some of the accusations that have surrounded this proposal and others like it. In fact, the House Oversight Committee conducted an investigation concerning allegations that Homeland Security improperly politicized the Freedom of Information Act process by allowing political appointees to review documents before they were released to the public. The committee's lengthy investigation and a corresponding review by the Inspector General found no evidence that the documents were edited prior to release for political reasons. According to the IG, and I'm quoting, "During our review, we learned from the Office of the Secretary, that the Office of the Secretary was involved in examining several hundred FOIA requests prior to disclosure. This process was created so the Department would be aware of certain FOIA requests that it deemed to be significant. After reviewing information and interviewing FOIA experts, we determined that the significant request review process of DHS did not prohibit the eventual release of information." End of quote. Now, to be clear, both the IG and the committee found the process to be inefficient and cumbersome. But I understand from the committee that it has since been modified to address these concerns. Now, on the amendment, I think it's a bad idea and perhaps counterproductive. Could lead to the exact opposite of the gentleman's intended result. Let me explain what I mean. In some cases, political review and decision-making will allow the Department to be more proactive in disclosing information to the public. Under this amendment, the head of the agency or another political appointee could not override an arbitrary decision by a bureaucrat to withhold documents that should be released. That bureaucrat could be protecting himself and his colleagues. Those documents should be released. There could be a perverse result, I think, if this amendment were adopted. And at least under the reading of our Oversight Committee colleagues, the amendment might prevent the agency from faithfully carrying out its responsibility to comply with FOIA requests. That's because, technically, the agency head is in charge of ensuring the process is completed. If they're taken out of the mix, it really calls into question who's accountable and whether the FOIA process would operate as intended. So we better be careful in treading on this ground. We could have exactly the opposite results from what is intended, and for that reason I oppose this amendment, and I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. Does anyone else wish to be heard on this amendment? If not, the question is on the amendment offered by the gentleman from Michigan. Those in favor say aye. Those no. The opinion of the chair, the ayes have it. Gentleman from North Carolina asks for roll call vote. Pursuant to Clause 6 of Rule 18, further proceedings on the amendment offered by the gentleman from Michigan will be postponed. For what purpose does the gentleman from Indiana rise?
Mr. Chairman, I have an amendment at the desk.
The Chairman has amendment at the desk. The clerk.
Regards 10% funding issue. The file number is Jordan 25.
Do you have a number on it?
No number on it. The file number is Jordan 25.
I think we have it. Clerk will report the amendment.
Amendment offered by Mr. Rokita of Indiana. At the end of the bill, before the short title, insert the following section. Each amount made available by this act, other than an amount required to be made available by a provision of law, amounts made available for U.S. Customs and Border Protection, and amounts made available for U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement is hereby reduced by 10%.
Gentleman from Indiana is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to thank you. I want to thank the gentleman from Alabama. I want to thank the minority party for it's just 10 after 12 by the clock of the House, and I know this is a long process. We have more to do tomorrow. I appreciate all parties allowing the House to work its will. I rise to offer an amendment tonight on behalf of the Republican Study Committee and myself to reduce the overall funding levels contained in the Homeland Security by 10%, with the exception of funds for ensuring the security of our nation's borders. This would save, Mr. Chairman, $2.5 billion. Our country is on the brink of a fiscal crisis. As Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff has stated repeatedly, our debt is the greatest threat to our national security. Not citizens going through our airports, not what appears to be 3 wars now we've involved ourselves in. Our debt is the greatest threat to our national security. We need to ensure that our tax dollars are spent wisely and efficiently, especially when it comes to protecting our nation. Unfortunately, the Department of Homeland Security is not an exception when it comes to examples of government waste. The Department of Homeland Security must focus its resources more effectively. In their short history, they have become inherently wasteful, creating programs that do not make our nation any more secure. And they're not unlike any bureaucracy that's come before it. A recent audit by the Defense Contract Audit Agency found 32 contracts collectively worth $34.3 billion that have been plagued by waste, abuse, or mismanagement from 2001 through 2006. If we pass this amendment and force an across-the-board cut, DHS will be forced to analyze its programs more effectively and become a more efficient agency as a result. Now, Mr. Chairman, I don't speak tonight out of mere opinion. I speak tonight out of experience. You see, I used to run a bureaucracy. I used to run a bureaucracy that ran on $1987 unadjusted for inflation, and we had good result. In my former Securities Division alone, because of great people, we got 300 years of jail time awarded and over $52 million of restitution. The government can do more with less on all levels, and that includes the Department of Homeland Security. DHS funding needs to be reconfigured, focusing on protecting targets that are legitimate terrorist threats rather than dispersing funds on a per capita basis. That's a wasteful, inefficient, and ineffective way to do things. Secondly, DHS must redefine its mission and focus on what its original purpose was, protecting the homeland from terrorist attacks. As we approach its 10th anniversary, no longer does DHS focus solely on Homeland Security. They now focus on mass casualty events, totally unrelated to terrorism like natural disasters. Firefighter and cops funding, once funded locally on the state and local level, is funded through grants by the federal government. And while no member of this body will contend they are not vital to our communities, these programs that federal tax dollars are paying for are not federal responsibility under our Constitution, and for a very good reason. We need to start making tough decisions, Mr. Chairman. This amendment builds upon the work of the Appropriations Committee in reducing spending, but I believe it can go further, and I reserve the balance of my time.
Gentleman yields back the balance of his time. Cannot reserve. For what purpose the gentleman from Alabama rise?
Mr. Chairman, I move to strike the last word.
Recognized for 5 minutes.
Mr. Chairman, I appreciate the intent of the gentleman from Indiana's amendment. I think it is very well intended. I think he makes some valid points in his argument. However, I'm going to have to reluctantly oppose the amendment. The bill that we have before us tonight strikes the right balance between funding priority programs that are essential to our nation's security and keeping discretionary spending in check. The bill cuts nearly $3 billion, or 7% from the request. That does not take into account the internal cuts taken to address the $650 million shortfall for aviation security and customs due to the phony fee offset used by the administration. It also does not reflect the significant increase provided to ensure robust funding for disaster relief. The committee has cut underperforming and ill-managed programs. We've made difficult choices on priorities for the bill. Significant cuts in this bill include $215 million from headquarters consolidation, then an additional $69 million from the Department of Management and Operations, an additional $81 million from the Transportation Security Support, an additional $629 million from Science and Technology Research Development, and more than $2 billion from FEMA's first responder grants. Deeper cuts will serve no other purpose than endangering critical security operations from our frontline agencies, such as the Coast Guard, the Secret Service, FEMA, TSA, that conduct daily operations to make our land secure. This past year, we have seen intensified terrorist activity, including new threats to aviation and several homegrown plots. As I have mentioned before, we have endured a near constant occurrence of natural disasters across this nation, which require robust response to capabilities and recovery investments. In light of all these challenges, the importance of the Department's works cannot be overemphasized. This is especially true as we approach the 10th anniversary of September the 11th. Because of these reasons, I would urge my colleagues to oppose this amendment, and I reserve the balance of my time.
The gentleman yields back. The gentleman from North Carolina, for what purpose?
Mr. Chairman, I move to strike the last words.
The gentleman is recognized for 5 minutes.
Mr. Chairman, our chairman has expressed very well the reasons for opposing this amendment. It simply would weaken our security dangerously. And we're talking here not just about first responders and firefighters. We're also talking about frontline DHS personnel in a number of our agencies. I join him in urging rejection of this amendment. And yield back.
For what purpose? The gentleman from Ohio rise.
Move to strike the last word.
The gentleman is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank the Chairman. Let me also thank the committee, in particular the subcommittee chair, for their hard work on this legislation and the number of bills that will come from the Appropriations Committee. We do appreciate that. Look, the gentleman from Indiana is right. Let's just remember some of the numbers. $14 trillion national debt, $1.6 trillion deficit this year. That's following 2 previous years of running record annual deficits. $220 million deficit for the month of February we had earlier this year, a record monthly deficit, and over $200 billion we pay in interest each year just to service that record debt built up by these record deficits. And most importantly, just remember 6 weeks ago, Standard & Poor's said the future credit rating, the outlook for America's credit, is now negative for the first time in 70 years. So something's got to give here, guys. We can't keep doing the same old and expect some different result. We are spending way more than we're taking in. Every family, every small business owner, everyone in America knows you can't do that. We've got to stop. The federal government is doing the equivalent of a family making $50,000 spending $85,000 a year. Making $50,000 a year, spending $85,000. And we're not just doing it one time because we're investing in something that's going to have a return. We're not just doing it one time for starting a business or putting a kid through school. We're doing it year after year after year, and somehow we think that's all going to work out. It's not going to work out, and American people understand it, and they expect tough decisions. They expect the kind of thing that Mr. Rokita is bringing forward in his amendment today, and that's why I rise to support this amendment. What this would do is actually consistent with the Republican Study Committee budget brought in front of this body earlier this year. We think it makes sense. And if you remember, that budget that we brought forward actually gets to balance within the budget window, the only budget brought forward that actually balances within the 10-year time frame, something the American people expect of their members of Congress, something the American people expect Congress to do. And so I applaud the gentleman from Indiana for his amendment and would urge a yes vote, and with that would yield back my time.
Gentleman yields back. Does any other member seek recognition on this amendment? If not, the question is on the amendment offered by the gentleman from Indiana. Those in favor say aye. Opposed say nay. Opinion of the chair, the noes have it. Gentleman from Indiana.
Mr. Chairman, I ask for a recorded vote.
Pursuant to Clause 6 of Rule 18, further proceedings on the amendment offered by the gentleman from Indiana will be postponed. Gentleman from Indiana.
Mr. Chairman, I have another amendment at the desk.
Clerk will designate the amendment. Does this one have a name or a number?
File number 9 at the top.
I think we have it. Clerk will designate the amendment.
Amendment offered by Mr. Rokita of Indiana. At the end of the bill, before the short title, insert the following section. None of the funds made available in this act may be used for official receptions or representations.
Gentleman from Indiana is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I rise tonight to offer an amendment that would safeguard America's air travel by restricting funding in this bill for any collective bargaining by the Transportation Security Administration. Recently, President Obama's administration announced a decision to allow the TSA unions to...
Gentleman will suspend. I think we reported the wrong amendment. I'd ask the clerk to re-report the amendment.
Amendment offered by Mr. Rokita of Indiana. At the end of the bill, before the short title, insert the following section. None of the funds made available by this act may be used to implement the determination of the administrator of the Transportation Security Administration regarding transportation security officers and collective bargaining as described in the decision memorandum dated February 4th, 2011.
Is this the amendment the gentleman intended?
That's correct, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for your patience.
The gentleman is now recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you. Like I said, Mr. Chairman, I rise today to offer an amendment that would safeguard America's air travel. Recently, President Obama's administration announced a decision to allow the Transportation Security Administration, TSA, the unions, to enter into collective bargaining agreements. This would restrict our ability to meet ever-changing dangers and will add to federal spending, which in our time of federal deficits would be irresponsible. Since the creation of TSA 10 years ago, its unions have been prohibited from collective bargaining, and for good reason. This ban comes from former TSA Administrator Loy determining that collective bargaining agreements would hamper the critical nature of TSA agents' national security responsibilities. TSA agents are no different than FBI, CIA, and Secret Service agents. We do not negotiate collective bargaining agreements with security personnel, and TSA clearly falls, Mr. Chairman, within that category. We've witnessed the necessary flexibility of the TSA. In 2006, after a British airliner bombing plot was discovered, TSA was able to overhaul its policies within 12 hours. If unionization occurs, TSA will be less flexible and less efficient in doing their business to protect America. Contracts and demands of collective bargaining are complex and they're cumbersome. They are less flexible than is needed in national security situations. The union demands will unquestionably make our transportation security more costly and less efficient. And certainly, let's not ignore the fact that the recourse that citizens have when they are mistreated, illegally groped, or otherwise not served will be reduced, if not been made non-existent with a union. I will work to ensure that collective bargaining does not impact the safety of any American travelers or needlessly subject our rights or personal space to a union or its leaders. Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. For what purpose does the gentleman from Mississippi rise? What purpose does the gentleman from North Carolina rise?
Mr. Chairman, I rise in opposition to this amendment. It's premature. There's not yet been a completed election for union representation at TSA. Moreover, it's unwise. The TSA administrator has made a modest and limited proposal to allow limited collective bargaining for transportation security officers. I think that's in the best interest of TSA, and it has been restricted to non-security issues. So it's a wise proposal and a modest one, and we should allow it to go forward. And at this point, I'd like to yield to our colleague, Mr. Thompson from Mississippi, who is the ranking member of the Authorizing Committee on Homeland Security.
Thank you. Mr. Speaker, I rise in opposition to the amendment. I've been on the Committee for Homeland Security since its inception. We've gone through hearing after hearing looking at this issue of collective bargaining for TSA employees. I might add that the rationale for offering this amendment has been completely refuted by every hearing we've ever had in the committee. I'm convinced that our men and women who work for TSA do a good job. However, the documentation is clear. They need additional training. They need a number of other items that collective bargaining can get them. For instance, they have a different personnel system than other federal employees. They have a different salary schedule than other employees. All those things lead to reduced morale for the employees. More importantly, we have collective bargaining rights for Customs and Border Protection employees, the Federal Protective Service, and nowhere have we ever found where our good men and women in uniform cannot perform admirably in any situation. The record is clear. Where our union employees are federalized, they do a good job. So this notion that somehow collective bargaining is incorrect or improper should not go opposed. Apart from that, this is a heightened awareness situation. The men and women at TSA deserve the right to collective bargaining. For the record, Mr. Speaker, let me add that they're halfway there. There are 40,000 employees. They've already had an election, 3 union sought representation. We're now down to the runoff for 2. Let the men and women do their job. Collective bargaining is not a bad thing for our men and women at TSA. Lastly, let me say that Administrator Pistol has it right. His record with the FBI is impeccable. He looked at the situation, made a decision that had been kicked around for too many years at the department. Let's give the men and women at TSA the right to choose a collective bargaining unit if they so choose to decide on a collective bargaining unit. Mr. Speaker, I now yield back the balance of my time.
I thank the gentleman and yield back our time.
Gentleman yields back. Does anyone else wish to be heard on this amendment? If not, the question is on the amendment offered by the gentleman from Indiana. Those in favor say aye. Those opposed say no. No. Opinion of the chair, the noes have it. Gentleman from Indiana.
Mr. Chairman, I ask for a recorded vote.
Pursuant to Clause 6 of Rule 18, the further proceedings on the amendment offered by the gentleman from Indiana will be postponed. Gentleman from Alabama.
Mr. Chairman.
Gentleman from Alabama is recognized.
I move the committee do now rise.
Motion that the committee rise. All those in favor of the committee rising say aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Opposed say no. The ayes have it. The committee rises.
Mr. Chairman.
Directs me to report that it has come to no resolution thereon.
Chairman of the Committee of the Whole House on the State of the Union reports that the committee has had under consideration H.R. 2017 and has come to no resolution thereon. Chair lays before the House the following personal request.
Leave of absence requested for Mr. Lucas of Oklahoma for Monday, May 31st and for today.
What purpose does the gentleman from Alabama seek recognition?
I move that the House do now adjourn.
The question is on the motion to adjourn. Those in favor say aye. Those opposed, no. Opinion of the chair, the ayes have it. The motion is adopted. Accordingly, the House stands adjourned until 10 a.m. today for the morning hour debate.
So the House is gavelled out, but earlier today, members began work on the 2012 Homeland Security spending